Hey, everybody, we're live. I am not at the NFL Combine as I've announced, but through the magic of technology, we are sort of there. And hey, everybody, we're live. I am not at the NFL Combine as I've announced, but through the magic of technology, we are sort of there. And hey, everybody, we're live. I am not at the NFL Combine as I've announced, but through the magic of technology, we are sort of there. And hey, everybody, we're live. I am not at the NFL Combine as I've announced, but through the magic of technology, we are sort of there. Let's see here. I'm going to go back and go to where we were before. Waiting for, we were supposed to start at 1:15. Welcome, folks. Sorry about that. Got a little off track, but we're going to get back on track really fast by sharing this screen. And there is press conference. Okay, so we're waiting. Okay, so anyway, how you doing? Really excited to hear what Coach McDaniels has to say. So excited I was that I got a little off track, but love to hear what he's presenting. And this is the first new head coach hire since the Raiders hired John Gruden in 2018. And I was there for his first NFL Combine speech. And to this time, with mom and COVID considerations at play for me, and I would dare say that might be the case for many of you, not this time. What am I looking forward to hearing Josh McDaniels talk about? I want to know what kind of system we're going to get. Are we going to get the New England Patriots system of 2007, the passing game that produced a Tom Brady that threw for over 5,000 yards and 48 touchdowns? Or are we going to get the passing game of the 20s that was a mix of 2020 that was a run-oriented because they had Cam Newton? We don't have Cam Newton. We have Marcus Mariota with Derek Carr. What kind of offense, the question never raised, are we going to get? Because Coach McDaniel has been in the role of New England Patriots offensive coordinator for so many years, going back to 2006, that it's fair to say he's probably gained this personal playbook of approaches he'd want to use since his Denver days. And I want to know what that's going to be. Now, if I were there, would I ask it? Of course I would ask it. Do I expect any of the people among the press corps there to ask the question? No, because unfortunately, the press corps tends to be interested in the person. In other words, a set of questions based on somebody's attitude about Derek Carr or Marcus Mariota or any, you name the player. Okay, it's the conversations are player centric. They're not system interested. So you don't get those questions about schemes or analytics. Now, you did with Gruden, and you got a provocative answer regarding analytics. In fact, even then, you didn't get a question about schemes much. But John really opened the door to that conversation when he said, I need ideas. I gave him one. I gave him a set of plays. He said, I need ideas. And he was looking for ideas. So do I expect Josh McDaniels to come in six guns a-blazing and say, I need ideas? No, I don't. It would be interesting if he did, but no, I don't. The difference between McDaniels and Gruden, from the perspective of experience prior to the job, is like night and day in McDaniels' favor. Gruden was coming in having not coached since, his Tampa Bay Buccaneers days until I believe 2007, when he went into the broadcast booth. Now, by contrast, Josh McDaniels comes to us from the Patriots. His last job was, last year, right? So he's flipping over and joining a new organization, the Raiders. And he's bringing that arguably generations worth, or generation, plural, singular, generation singular worth of experience with him. So I don't expect Coach McDaniels to come out and say, I'm not saying he's adverse to ideas, I'm looking for ideas. But Gruden was coming in having represented a different generation of coach, which we kind of later found out wound up in his emails. But anyway, that generation of coach, and I've known Gruden since '98, wasn't into analytics. And it led to some playful repartee between members of the media and him regarding the idea that he might be this dinosaur, old-fashioned, smash mouth, why do I need analytics kind of guy, right? He really played with that. The reality, though, is that John Gruden grew into a coach who really embraced analytics. In fact, as much as John is a junkie for scheme, I thought it was not really true that he was not a fan of analytics. I think he might have been I think John may be one of these guys that isn't quite at the big data bowl level. I love the big data bowl, which, by the way, is this week at the NFL Combine. I believe it's Thursday night. I went the last time. There's video on it, and I would have gone back again to see if it's going to be live streamed. I love big data, and I love these different approaches that students come up with. I think the NFL ought to open it out to analyze data. In fact, you know what? The NFL should make it more of a game and not this eggheady thing that is such that the winner of it is from Harvard or an Ivy League school. The guy that won it that I'm thinking of came up with an idea that I didn't think was practical. Of course, I didn't say that. I wasn't trying to be nasty. I just didn't think it was a practical application of analytics to football. I thought it was cute. I thought it was interesting, but the best, and I'm forgetting the guy's name, but the best analytics big data bowl entry for me that year from 2019 was from a fellow who had figured out how to calculate the contract value of a player on the offensive line. Yeah, I mean, he literally had the team literally had it broken down to the value of a block. And so you could take that into a contract situation and say, well, pick it. Pick the offensive lineman, Leatherwood as one example, or Colton Miller as another. Well, Mr. Miller, let's take a look at your matrix of most valuable blocks and least valuable blocks and see what we're looking at. How many times have you laid out blocks that are really valuable to the team? Now, if his agent were savvy, Colton Miller's agent would come back and say, wait a minute, let's look at the plays that you designed that put my client in a position to be of value to you. All right. So you see how exciting that is? You see how that really changes the conversation regarding contract value and player value, I thought it was a tremendous invention. It didn't win. I was crestfallen. I was standing there with the two folks that created it. And I was flabbergasted. I could not believe they lost. Talking about, hey, welcome. Talking about the Big Data Bowl right now, the NFL Combine Big Data Bowl. I couldn't believe they lost. And what I'm talking about, for those who just joined me, is a 2019 entry where it estimated the value of each offensive line block on a per play basis, not even drilling down to steps and contact and outcome. It was really cool. Really cool. So you could say, hey, wait a minute. So maybe the two of you agree that, let's say you analyze a set of games where the Raiders won and the offense set record levels. Okay, start with those, and then you can evaluate his contract from that basis, because then you can say, all right, we know the line was effective and we know the play was right, but could it have been better? The value of the play that we ran, where you executed that block, could you have done it even better, making more money for yourself and more yardage for us? It was really cool. Okay. And again, if it were used in the league, it would change the conversation regarding player value, particularly on the offensive line. So, and it's useful. So I really skewed to the place of saying, hey, you know what? Give me something. Give me something that I can use, that I can really use. Okay. We're still waiting for Coach McDaniels, by the way. Let me see if the Raiders have. Let me refresh the screen and see if anything has happened here. There it is. Nope, still waiting. Oh, here he is. Here he is. Here he is.
Playing as many games as he did as a rookie. There's good and there's bad. But when you're that young, you look at it as what can we you look at it as what can we work with, what can we fix. There's a lot to do in that process. I've already spoken to him. That process is underway, and I think what we'll end up doing is whatever's best for the Raiders. He's shown the ability to play, in both spots. More guard last year than tackle, but we see him being a contributor. We see him being a guy that we're really excited to work with. We're going to try to get the most out of him.
Have there been any talks about extending that, and are you comfortable after going into the season?
I can't hear the questions. That's the only thing.
No specific things relative to extending that at this point, but that doesn't mean that's not going to change. We are aware of where we're at on that in that process. I think we're just trying to get everything kind of set now in the building. Our staff is obviously, this has been a big chunk of this first 3 or 4 weeks, is trying to put the right people in place here. I've met and spoken to Derek a number of times now, just trying to begin our relationship. I think it's really an important one. The head coach, the play caller, the quarterback, getting to know one another as people, kind of how we think, how we work. The football part of that will come later, which I think is also an important part of the puzzle. But really happy with the opportunity that I've had to get to know him. He's there, he's there in Nevada. He stays there in Nevada. So we're aware of where things are. And again, that the group on either side of the ball. And so I think personalities are important. Experience is important. Youthful ideas and things like that are important. And room for growth. I think we try to consider all of those things as we try to put it together. And then not least of which is the opportunity to get them, and so your familiarity with people is important as you try to put together a staff. but you're certainly not going to have working knowledge of everybody that you hire. And so the biggest word we continue to use is patience. We feel like that's a virtue in this process in terms of trying to put together the right group of people to work together. And I think we're well on our way to doing that.
Along those lines, before the Patrick's background as a sports, the Raiders have been a 4-3 team the last few years. Is that a big transition? Will there be a transition to a game at all? Or?
I don't think so. I mean, we've talked about this a lot. Anymore in today's NFL, 80 to 85% of your defense is in nickel or dime, and so, the concept of being a 4-3 or 3-4 is kind of almost, it's kind of almost out of the window now. What we want to do is we want to try to be able to play to the strengths of the players that are on our roster. We know we have some really good players that played in a 4-man line last year. We're going to try to accentuate their strengths. And at the same time, we want to be multiple enough to be able to change some things from week to week if we need to or feel like we have to try to give us the best chance to stop the opponent. So, there'll be a level of multiplicity that hopefully we can grow and graduate to. But the biggest thing for us is try to make our players successful by putting them in great positions. Absolutely. Everybody, I have great respect for Bill and that process, and spoke to him directly multiple times about any interest that I had in people that were there. And I'll keep those conversations private, but never want to do the wrong things relative to those things. Obviously, feel very fortunate that I had an opportunity to add a few people that I've worked with before, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, just, try to do the right things relative to communicating, with him or any other coach for that matter, if you're interested in somebody that works in their organization. Yeah. You need to be able to look at the whole year as an opportunity to improve your team. It's not just small windows in March or April. There's opportunities, in pro free agency. There's opportunities in the draft. There's opportunities after the draft. Players that didn't get drafted. There's opportunities that are going to present themselves later on in the spring, the summer, all the way through the course of the season, the trade deadline. So, being patient and trying to develop your roster over time and taking a longer term approach to it is something that we're going to try to do. We know we have areas where we got to address them at some point, whether that's a frontline player or depth. But we're no different than any other team at this point. I think you can factor that in, and the level of competition certainly is one of the factors you can consider. But I think the evaluation of the player is rather large. There's a lot of things to consider. And honestly, there's certain players that may have a level of experience against competition that's significant. But every one of these guys that's coming out in the draft that you're add to your football team are going to need to grow and improve and learn how to play at our level, regardless of where they played college football. So, we're just going to try to sink our teeth into each guy, each opportunity to learn about them and digest that information as best we can, and then make the best decisions we can possible. I'd say rather significant, and just, I'm at peace with it. Nick's a really good coach. I was fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of those guys there for a long time. They're a big reason why we had success. But Nick's players are always well prepared. He's a really good teacher. He's a motivator. You never have to ask him to work harder or longer because he always does everything he can. I think you do them both at the same time. We'll try to teach our foundation and our terminology so that we understand the language. I think everything starts with what language are you going to speak, and we'll teach everyone that together in the spring and or whenever we get that opportunity. But once we know the language and we're able to talk it together, I think really the next thing we do is start putting things out there and trying them, and figuring out what your players do well, what do they handle the best. And then if they do some things well and you add to it, if they do some things that you don't feel like we can make better, then maybe we move away from it. But each year to me is really similar in terms of the approach overall. I don't think I've ever had one year copy the next, as we've gone through my coaching career. Just try to evaluate the team that you're going to put together this year and see what they all do well together, and then try to do it as many times as you can, understanding there's going to be challenges and obstacles as we go forward, but that's going to be the plan as we head into spring here.
Two more. Right? Pretty clear several years ago that the Patriots made an effort to want to keep you around. Was there any similar effort this offseason when the conversation started?
I don't. It really wasn't about that. I don't think it was really. I can't even tell you how much they've done for me in my career. So what they've done for me and the opportunities that they've given me and what they've rewarded me with personally and professionally, there was no need to do anything like that. This was really a decision about what was best for me at this time and the challenge that I could take on here in Vegas. And I'm excited to do that.
Last question. How prepared is he to be able to handle the challenges that don't face even great staff right now? How ready is he to handle that?
Mac's a great kid. I don't know the situation, what's is or isn't going on anywhere else, but Mac's a great kid. Works extremely hard. I was really fortunate to have a chance to coach him. And the people that had touched Mac Jones prior to him coming to New England, deserve a tremendous amount of credit. The people that coached him in high school, the people that coached him, at Alabama, the parents that raised him, they did a great job with him as a human being. And I'm not sure I've been around a more mature young football player in terms of understanding the game and being able to process at such a speed and such a level that Mac was. So I don't have any doubt that Mac's going to meet the challenge head on. I wish him nothing but the best, and I'll be pulling for him except when he plays Vegas next year.
Last question right here.
Josh, obviously it's exciting for you to go back and coach your first game, albeit an exhibition at home. But more importantly, how much does it benefit you installing all that new stuff? An extra week of practice and an extra week of practice.
I think there's a lot of benefits to this game for us. The number one thing is really to have an opportunity to be with our players and to get them in there and really try to take our time and go through the process of building our football team and our foundation this summer together. Have a couple extra days to do that. I know it doesn't sound like much, but to us, I think it's a great opportunity, especially as we're starting this year together. And to be able to go there back home, in Canton, Ohio. I've been in the NFL. It's my 22nd year, and I've never had the privilege of coaching in that game. So very lucky to have that opportunity to go back home and to put our football team in that position to try to learn and grow early in camp and to go out there and play the exhibition game there. I'm really looking forward to it, and I think our organization will too.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So, folks, that was Josh McDaniel. He came in with the Patriot-style hoodie, basically sending the message that he's going to be Belichickian, But I took a number of notes. I took a number of notes I want to share and get your commentary on. First of all, I have 2 pages of them. This is my little Super Bowl Oakland meetings thing. Anyway, Josh McDaniels, Derek Carr have a great relationship. They're getting to know each other. But Derek he's in the building. He lives in Vegas. He's there. And that's a good thing, as opposed to, let's say, if he lived in, Miami and had some summer home or something like that, right? So they're still at the beginning stage of their relationship, but from what McDaniels presents is positive. Then he switched to a question regarding defense, because there's been a lot of chatter about whether or not the Raiders are going to play a 3-4-4-3 and that it's multiple, and there's some people who don't seem to cotton to that, if you will. McDaniel says the defense will be multiple, and today, and he's right, there really is less concern of 3-4-4-3. I think, for me, when I asked the question about that to Gruden in 2018, and he answered there's going to be 4-3-1 single gap, my concern wasn't so much whether it was going to be 4-3 or 3-4, but the gap play. Is it going to be single gap or gap control two gap? I'm not a fan of two gap, because you have to have personnel that will not get blown off the ball and can hold their place. And when you're asking a player to do that, a defensive player to do that against an offensive lineman that's bench pressing, 700 pounds and north of that, it's going to be a long day. And the long day won't be for the offensive lineman. It'll be for our people. Okay. So you give your person, in my philosophy, a running start by giving them the advantage of using their quickness to get off the ball and get around that offensive line person, so they have less chance of getting in their mitts on them, or maybe their fists, because you can't hold, right? That's still very important to me. But what he is referring to is the kind of multiple defenses packages, the package approach that New England had and has, where, for example, in the Super Bowl, when they played the Rams and won here in Atlanta, what happened in that contest was that the New England Patriots pulled out the defense style, and this was Brian Flores who actually drew this defense up, that they hadn't used in almost ever. It consisted of what I call 1970s tactics. You bring your linebackers, your outside linebackers up close. You refer to them as outside linebackers. You have everybody close to the line of scrimmage. You're pressing, and you're sending the message you're going to blitz quickly. And it really confounded the Rams. Then they got rid of that. And it wasn't under Brian Flores that they did that approach. That's Bill Belichick. So let me take Romeo Crennel. Same thing. Romeo Crennel would talk about defenses that packages, styles, formations they hadn't used in years, but a particular situation against a particular opponent brought up that opportunity to use that defense. And what I'm emphasizing is we're going to get that with the Raiders. And that's really an exciting thing. But it's going to call for Raider fans to be more analytical about what the team is doing. Now you've got the all 22. You've got past videos you can look at to find out what was played that worked against a particular team that season, that year, or that particular style in previous years. It's going to call for Raider fans to be more pointillist about in their study of the organization and what it's doing, because what he's saying to you is, hey, we are going to tailor our game plan to that opponent just as much as a tailor would design a suit for your specific body. On the question regarding Bill Belichick, he says he can talk to him at any time about any player. They have an open door relationship. So if he's interested in a particular player, sure, he can call him. On players, he said they have areas of need that they need to address, but he didn't specify what those areas were. I think as Raider fans, we can get some idea of what they are. Well, secondary, linebacker, wide receiver, primarily. And he says but overall, my assessment of Josh McDaniels was that he was measured and mature. He wasn't what I expected at all. He was very matter of fact, very comfortable. He sounds like he has a systems approach. And the difference between McDaniels and Gruden is like night and day, in a good way. Gruden came in the situation having not coached since 2007. This was 2018, and a lot had changed since the time he went away. And yeah, he had what's called the Fired Football Association, Fired Football Coaches Association, FFCA. He had, right. But it's one thing to do that and then be on ESPN talking about plays like Spider 2Y Banana that were used 20 years ago with a time pass, but it's something else to talk about or have to deal with defensing a read option that wasn't used much when you were coaching. That's not the case with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels' last job was last year. He wasn't out of football. And he is clearly a contemporary of the contest. And as I said before he started talking, I think between the time of the Broncos and now he's gained a lot more approaches that he want to use. The one concern I have in all of this is with the terminology, because I wasn't for a coaching change. A number of you were not. You wanted Rick. We all wanted Bisaccia to be head coach, take the interim tag off, put him in, right? But look, that didn't happen. And as I said before, Mark Davis made a decision that he wanted to build a champion, and he wanted to get a champion to build a champion. That's really what he wants to do. And I have to say, I think he's got the right foundation to do it. Because I go back to, again, comparing Josh McDaniels to Gruden. And the fact of the matter is that Josh McDaniels is further ahead from the perspective of Raiders head coach. He's further ahead than Gruden was at the time. And because, again, Gruden had been out of football for a significant amount of time. And so there were jokes like, and Gruden opened himself up to it. He made a crack about analytics, and that can turn into some, bashing from that part. And you remember the drill. From that perspective, this happened at the Combine. The McDaniels conversation was straightforward. It was business. It was, again, Belichickian. And that was that. He answered the questions in a short way and almost a matter-of-fact way, like he was comfortable with the material. By contrast, John Gruden was saying, I need ideas. I gave him an idea at the NFL annual meeting for a play that actually became a staple in the Raider offense under Gruden, which is that fake crossbuck swing pass play set that they ran. That was what I gave him, and I'm proud of that. But at any rate, my point is, Josh McDaniels, it's not that he doesn't need it, and I would definitely, would any good football junkie, appreciate it, but he's got something in place. The main question has to do with a question that was not answered, and it's the question I would have asked if I were there. Are you, and maybe somebody did ask it, and I didn't hear it, but no. Or maybe they asked it at some point while he was there. Or maybe people are afraid to ask it. It's the Las Vegas question. Are you prepared for, or do you have a system to prevent or mitigate players going out and getting in trouble in Las Vegas? Okay, that's a question, because that problem punctuated the Raiders season last year. It also punctuated the Raiders season the year before that. And right now, I don't see anything to say that McDaniels has that under control, because he hasn't presented that, right? He hasn't presented that. The Patriot way has been to say, okay, if you don't meet our standards, we're going to get rid of you. We'll find somebody that will run the 5 yard out the way you want it, and so on. But I assert that approach does not take into account the person who does what you want on the field, but then goes off the field and winds up in Dre's nightclub and gets involved in a shooting, right? You can have players like that. Darren Arnett, very good on the field, but off the field, there were Fruit Loops. Guns over here, bad relationships over there, bad money over yonder. Next thing you know, the person's wound up in jail, and you hope that they don't wind up dead. So the Las Vegas question for me is still outstanding. It really is. But that's about it. I said he said that Nick Lombardi is a really good coach. He's a teacher. So he's very impressed with his teaching skill. And what I take away from that is that, and he's very happy about the coaching staff that he's put together. He's put together a coaching staff of teachers. And that's very much like what Bill Walsh would do and has done. And it makes me think that Josh McDaniels was reading Bill Walsh's book, which I have on my bookshelf, Building a Champion, which is the handbook anybody should have on their bookshelf if they're truly a football fan of organizations and what it takes to build a winning team. Bill Walsh has all the situations laid out. It's still relevant today, and I would be shocked if Josh McDaniels didn't have that on his bookshelf and didn't refer to it on the way to getting this job, and even after he got the job. It shows that he's got that in here. And then, of course, Bill Belichick puts a lot of that into practice too, and McDaniels learned from Belichick, obviously, by working for him as offensive coordinator. So overall, I think quite excited to see what he puts together. Concerned, but not overly concerned. He has a system. And as Bill Walsh liked to say, you want to have a system or approach so that you're already down on paper so that you're comfortable making your game plan, you're comfortable approaching your game, and you're comfortable approaching the game, and you're comfortable with what you're doing. You have a basis of confidence. And the one thing that I can say, I believe, is that Coach McDaniel has a basis of confidence moving forward that I didn't see from Gruden, because Gruden admittedly was coming in new. He developed it later, but we knew what happened with. I thought the Raiders were forming a good team last year, and I think they would have went to the playoffs with Gruden at the helm anyway, probably even deeper into it, because they relied more on a shorter passing game. But that didn't happen. It didn't happen. And, I'm going to say a lot more for that in a second, but I want to get to Abdullah's question. Abdullah, how you doing? He says, yo, Zinni, how's everything? It's all right, man. My mom's downstairs. I'm going to help her, and I'm overhauling Oakland News Now. Site's going to be called oaklandnewsnowblog.com soon, and making some changes there, and rather exhausted as a result. Looking forward to seeing Batman, but I'm looking forward to eating dinner with my mom. I'm here for my mom, and that's the topmost priority for me these days. He asks, does Abdullah, do you think McDaniel will call the plays? Yes, I do. I don't see a reason why he would let go of that. I think everybody in my history of the NFL, people who are offensive specialists like Josh tend to want to call the plays even as head coach. People who are defensive specialists tend to want to put their hands on the defense, even as head coach. There are people who are the rare exceptions. Tom Landry, for me, is at the top of the list because Tom Landry is the father of the 4-3 defense. He created it. Then he created the flex defense to mitigate the clear weakness of the 4-3, which is its inability in its standard form to stop the Green Bay sweep. Landry adjusted the flex to design in angles of pursuit and create a zone defense against the run, right? But as coach, what did he do? He called the plays. Coach Landry was always 2 or 3 steps ahead in his brain, expressionless. And so they basically called him a walking IBM computer, which was the thing because IBM was the thing in those days, okay? I don't think you're going to get that from McDaniel, but I definitely expect him to call the plays. I really do. And let me come right back to that. Well, hold on a second. Let me what would be your off-season mentality if you were Dave or Josh? I don't quite understand the question, so I'm going to take a crack at it, and you can let me know, Alvaro, if you think I'm on the right track of what you mean. It's one thing. You know what? I'm going to do this. To make it easier in terms of how we communicate, I'm going to invite you to put your camera on or your audio and ask a question. Here's the link, okay? There. And if you can grab hold of that link, come on in and ask the question, show your face, it'd be great. And that way I can understand you better. But I'm going to take a crack at what you're saying. Again, Alvaro says, what would be your off-season mentality if you were Dave or Josh? Now, Dave, which Dave? You mean Josh McDaniels, and you say Dave, who are you referring to? I think Josh McDaniels' offseason mentality is, well, look, he has a system, and his mentality is it's process oriented, it's step by step. It's evaluating your players. And I think looking at your players from the perspective of what you want to accomplish as a coach from an analytical perspective. In other words, do you want to form an offense based on your opponents where you expect a kind of, you say we're going to get a lot of 4-2-5 this year. We're getting a lot of the big body wide receivers. So you form and you shape your team with those expectations in mind, right? On offense and then on defense. And you craft a set of go-to plays. Every good coach has, and every coach should have, if they want to be good, a set of basket plays. And what I mean by that, these are plays that are in your basket that are your go-tos in different situations, which goes along with a situational response philosophy, right? And so, no doubt, Coach McDaniels is going to form those that set of plays, and then base training camp on learning those plays and terminology. This gets to. He says, Zinni, I would really love to join. I really would, but I'm at work. I'm just asking how the GM and head coach should look at both free agency and the draft. Okay. I think that they're going to look at free agency in terms of holes. Free agency from Josh McDaniels' perspective, like the Patriots, is going to be, how do I get player X to fit statistical need Y? Okay. So I know that in my analysis of the team and compare with what I want to do, I am deficient in this area. Now, how he looks at the Raiders, I don't know. And I think if he were savvy enough, he's not going to say that. He's going to be very general, because we're in a day and age where people are looking at video And if I'm an opposing coach, I know I'm going to face him. I'm looking back at stuff like this and I'm looking for an edge, right? Because I want to know ahead of time. I want to have ahead of time. It's insider trading. I want to know ahead of time what he's going to do, and I'm already ready to stop it. Okay. I want to know what he's going to switch to if he figures out what I'm doing, and then I'll be able to stop that too. So the more you talk in detail, the more you give up your advantage. You can speak in general terms, you're doing just fine. So I don't so having said that though, and looking at how the Patriots have worked under Belichick and McDaniel and others, they look for free agents that give them the ability to fill a need. And when I say statistical need, I mean in terms of maybe you have somebody that is so quick, they're a cone drill breaker, and you don't have them, and yet you need them to stop the kind of running plays that are bounce plays to the outside. Where the running back bounces to the outside, next thing you know, the person's found your weak side gap, responsibility isn't there, and whoosh, they're off to the races and it's touchdown, right? That can hurt you. But if you have somebody that is a cone breaker, and I think the Raiders actually have somebody like that already, then boom, or you can get by with that by scheme too, if you're willing to gap fill and you're willing to run blitz. So my point is, some teams look for players who can do something that their current set of players can't do. Other teams look at it differently. It's, hey, look, I want a player who can spell other players, right? Maybe they're not the best athlete on the team, but if your front guy goes down, they can come in and replace the front guy and be just as effective doing the same thing. Okay. Josh McDaniels, in my estimation, is more the former guy. In other words, he's the guy that's looking for the player that is going to be able to fill that special statistical need that his current set of players can't do. And I think the classic example of this is Jamie Collins, or I call him the Swiss Army knife linebacker who could play safety, who's just an enormously large person who has no business moving as fast as he does to be as big as he is. You look at that and you say, he can do things that my current players can't do. So where did he wind up with? New England twice. Okay. So there's an example. And there are others too. The Patriots are primarily, known for building through the draft. I do not expect the Raiders to be free agent, going hog wild and, signing people up and all this other stuff. Okay. So that's how I think they're going to look at free agency and the draft as well. Now, you're saying, how should they look at it? You're asking me, how should they look at it? In my estimation, since I'm a statistics and a data junkie, I think you have a data map of your team, and you look at where you're deficient and you find players to fill it. But with one proviso, you can go hog wild on that, but you got to make absolutely certain that you're getting people who fit well in your locker room. That's the other thing too. So you can have the person figured out statistically. So Roland Dubs, how you doing? Great to see you. Anybody else have any questions? It's a great question. And again, you can chime in on, here's the StreamYard link. If you want to chime in and say something, I'm going to wrap up in a little bit, unless somebody wants to come in or has another question. I'm going to wrap up at about 10 minutes and make it roughly a perfect hour program, right? So again, McDaniel's speech points to a promising 2022 with some concerns. If I were to, right off the bat, Without seeing the draft or anything else, make a prognostication, I would say playoffs. I would say that given how ready Josh McDaniels is, and he's confident, and it's a quiet confidence. He's comfortable, you know. He's putting on his gloves, he's going to work. It's another day at the office, but it's a new place, so he's excited. But because of his age and experience, he's not so excited that he's gone overboard or he's going to make outlandish decisions or make statements. This Josh McDaniels is not the guy in Denver. All right. This Josh McDaniels is not the guy in Denver. He has clearly grown up. And that's evident. And again, I can't emphasize how much he just seems really comfortable in his shoes and where he's at. And that's, half the battle. And again, that's half the battle. Godfather, you ought to be in here, man. He says, I totally agree with you. And I'm actually going to do a short video later, my take. Well, you should be in here sharing your take. This is Godfather is Joseph Almendaris, legendary Zenny62 media vlogger. So anyway, it, and I'm sorry I didn't, in criticism of me, I didn't tell anybody I was going to do this. I just did it. I should have, but it's been a very involved 2 weeks, folks. I'm just glad I got my brain. Whew. Okay. So we've got 5135. And again, here's the link. If anybody wants to chime in and offer their point of view, I'll just leave it. I'll just let it sit here. Again, my concern is, I call it the Las Vegas question. And I don't believe the Las Vegas question has been appropriately answered, because as much as he's comfortable, the simple fact of the matter is that he is also coming in, Josh McDaniels, from the outside. He is not familiar with Las Vegas culture. He is not familiar with what other NFL teams have had to go through with players there, because until the Raiders got there, there was no other example. Now there is. And I don't care what anyone says. You can point to Alvin Kamara. You can point to the 2007 NBA basketball All-Star game. There are all these examples of players getting into trouble and people getting into trouble in Las Vegas. And Josh McDaniels has not presented the idea that he's got this, and that they have. You say, well, how do I do this? This gets, in a sense, I think, you were asking me, Alvaro, where you were asking me how the GM and head coach look at free agency in the draft. But I'm going to twist that around a little bit, because my question, the question I would love to, I'm going to ask and then answer, is how the GM and head coach should look at Las Vegas and players and how they deal with that atmosphere. Okay. And to me, there should be some rules in big letters about, hey, no drinking and driving. No drinking and driving. Okay. If you go out and you're drinking, have a chaperone. Here's a number to call. If you need a place to party, here's a safe house. The Raiders should have different safe houses around Las Vegas. They should have a network of people that can keep them out of trouble. Okay. And they should have things for them to do. For example, rather than go to a party, why not go take a class in HTML programming or PHP or MySQL, right? Classes and skills that will better them for a computer age. Keep the minds busy. Classes in football management and being a head coach and a leader, that sort of thing. Classes in startup investing, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. Clubs. Need to have an infrastructure. Eric Raiders, another one. Look, Here's another Zenny62 vlogger who should be in here with showing his face, but they're asking questions. Come on, you're killing me. Now you would say, Zenny, you didn't warn us, and we're at work. You're right. All right. Eric Rader says, what Zenny, you're right. He says, Zenny, you're right. It's a different Josh McDaniels, and you're right. The Vegas aspect is going to be a huge factor on players. They bring in need of character guys like Derek Carr and Waller. He says, what's up? Dula says, those are great ideas. Do you think Vegas is a draw for free agents? Yes. The question is Vegas a draw to get free agents in trouble? Okay. And the answer is yes. So it's, it's the classic 6 of one, half a dozen of the other situation. Sure, it's a draw for free agents. Who wouldn't want to go to a place that's called Sin City, right? Sin City, okay? Joseph's going to jump on the feed for a few minutes, says Alvaro. Hey, Alvaro, how you doing, my man?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, man. I can hear you loud and clear. Welcome. Glad to have you. You're looking cool. Looking fly with the glasses and the hat, man. Nice.
Thank you, man. It's a pleasure meeting you. Finally.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored.
I've been watching your stuff for a while. Wow.
Oh, thank you. I'm back to doing this more often. I apologize for letting it slip. It won't happen again. So anyway, what'd you think, Coach McDaniels?
I mean, I kind of want to talk about Rich and how this kind of led to Josh McDaniels. I think people want to get in with Rich.
Keep going, Alvaro.
But yeah, so everyone wants to get on with Rich, but I was seeing a Rich in last year, and it kind of seems like it was more of an emotional push towards the end of the season. And that's when I was like, I really was looking forward to this superstar coach that Mark Davis had in mind. And so I'm really glad he made this decision. I mean, for the long run.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, Rich was awesome. Obviously, no other coach can just pull off something like that. But yeah, I'm really excited.
My concern, and I said it before, is that my concern is that I'm fearful that they don't have a place to deal with the Vegas issue. I think they were just getting it right. So let's throw in our other ones. Joseph, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I just had to put on that ear set because I know my always get feedback.
Joseph Mialvaro.
What's up, Alvaro?
And then let me unmute Eric. Eric, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, you guys? Hey, Joseph. Hey, Amaro.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I've been listening for a long time, so we're blessed to have him, and he's got his Raider hat on and everything else. Hey, so Alvaro sort of set the tone for the question. Joseph, what do you think of Josh McDaniels' speech? And I'll just leave it right there. Yeah, and
okay.
And Eric as well after Joseph has said,
So as I alluded to when I sent you a message, I do plan to give a short take and I'll go more in detail. But one of the things that I took briefly from Josh McDaniels' combine interview was the key thing about the defense for me was how he said he spoke with his other coaches. And they realized that there's an evolution. I'm paraphrasing, of course, I'm using my words, but there's an evolution in terms of how the NFL is moving forward and how they do the schemes with the defenses. And he said the fact that 80% of it's going to be nickel defenses or what have you, but the fact that the 3-4, the 4-3 defense is kind of an old school way of seeing things. And so what I see with Josh McDaniels, like you said, besides an underlying confidence, is the fortitude to want to evolve with the game because he sees how the game is evolving. And he's already talked about the coaches, how this evolution is occurring. And so one of the things that he's doing is he's working with that. He's not afraid to evolve with the game as opposed to other coaches, especially defensive coaches who are real successful in doing one thing. He's willing to evolve with a team and put on and work on the strengths of his team. And he's not afraid to switch it up from game to game, which tells me, depending on who's the opponent, it might be a 3-4 or 4-3, or maybe a hybrid of both.
One thing he said is that he said that most schemes at 3-4 are nickel anyway. Not that they're moving that way, but they're already that way.
Right. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Hey, Eric, what did you think?
I'm with Joseph there. I think with Josh, I don't remember having a Raiders coach in a while, even with Gruden, their ability to adapt during the game or to adjust in the second half of the game. Because you know what, the Raiders, they would always come off hot in the second half, slow in the first half. So I think with Josh, he will, like Joseph said, adapt to that during the game. And even Gruden had a hard time doing that at times when Gruden was coaching and adapting to what the other team that they were playing was doing. And I think with Josh, he will talk to his defensive coordinator. He will, say, hey, what are they doing? I think that relationship factor that Josh and Ziegler talk about amongst the coaching staff and stuff like that, I think that's going to play a huge factor on this team, because we all know with a relationship and chemistry with the coaching staff, I mean, they will be able to talk to each other during the game, and they will know, that defense is not working, let's change that. And they, or this offense is not working. So I think the communication part is my big takeaway with Josh. It's like, not saying that Gruden didn't do that, but this is like more of like what Joseph said, more in depth with building that relationship, that communication that you need as a team, especially during the game, because we all know the Raiders always had a hard time sometimes even changing something during the game when it was not working. And I believe Josh will do that. And he just seems different, like you said, Zinni, from Denver. And he knows his mistakes that he made in the past. But you are right, the Vegas element is a question mark, because you're going to need to bring in guys there that are good character guys that are not going to get into trouble. And the Raiders don't need any more of what happened last year at all. No more, hopefully. So that's going to, like you said, Zinni, that's going to play a huge role. I mean, I've been to Vegas. I partied in Vegas. You're going to have some kind of, I don't know, self-control when you go there. I mean, you got to know when to stop. You got to know when not to. So they're going to have to look at all that when they draft and when they bring in players, especially. Yeah, you know what I mean? I mean, Vegas is tempting. There's a lot of temptations out there. I've been there for New Year's 3 years in a row, and it is a party. But you gotta know when to, like they say, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. So and then hopefully they evaluate the guys that they talk to at the combine or whoever they draft, and make sure that their history. I think it's gonna tell. When they evaluate players too, they got to look at the guy's history. Does he have a track record of doing stuff like this, or habits or something like that? They got to really evaluate that before they bring somebody in to deal with living in Vegas, and stuff like that. So I think they're going to do that, and I trust Josh will do that. I'm still interested to know, though, what his offense is going to be. Is it going to be like how he used Mac Jones last year? I mean, Mac Jones had a successful year as a rookie. So is he going to use Carr that way? With this offense, he still hasn't really addressed that yet. So that would be one of my questions. What kind of offense he's going to run? Is it going to be like he ran in New England with Mac Jones, or is it going to be different? So, and regardless what
Well,
everybody thinks, I know Raider fans want Devontae Adams. I want him too, but sadly enough, I think Rodgers is going back to Green Bay. I think Devontae is going to stay in Green Bay. So the Raiders need to go out and get a receiver for Carr if they do extend his contract. And I
Joseph,
don't think he's going to get 40 million. I think he's going to get around 30 something. He ain't going to get 40.
what's up? Joseph wanted to say, go ahead, Joseph.
yeah,
Then I'll
going
borrow.
back to going to the defense. With the thing why it didn't work with Gruden is after a while, at least with Gruden, there was a predictability, and everybody figured this out. The difference with Josh McDaniels, the idea of changing maybe from play to scheme to quarter to quarter. There's going to be an evolution, be different. It's not going to be one idea, and that's all they're going to do throughout the game. When the question was asked, was we don't know what he's going to do with the offense yet, but we had glimpses. Just if you listen close to the interview and kind of read between the lines, the same thing he's going to do with the defense, he's going to do with the offense. We don't know what it's going to look like because he said, he plays with the strengths of the players that he has. So the uniqueness there might be similarities, but it's going to be a Raiders' very own build-up of schemes and new plays. There will be similarities, but the great thing is that, like he's mentioned with the defense, is that there's going to be it's going to change play to play or opponent to opponent. So I suspect, at least with the offense, it'll be the same. Now it'll be an offense. Needless to say, but yes, at the same time, he hasn't told details because we're still working out who we are for the wide receivers, who we're going to get anything in free agent staff, and there's some key elements that we have to figure out the right tackle situation. So depending on those two things, I think as that comes about, we're going to see more of an idea of what jobs we'll have in store for the Raiders.
Yeah, Alvaro, you want to add to that?
Right.
Alvaro?
Yeah.
Yeah, your thoughts.
Is my mic working good?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a little laggy, but okay. So yeah, what were we talking about? Las Vegas, right?
Yeah. Your thoughts basically on let me put it another way. What would you like to see McDaniels in terms of offense do? What would you like to do?
For the offense, I guess McDaniels, it's complicated because McDaniels, I guess, runs more of I think like a not necessarily a flashy offense. It's more of an operational option type offense, and so it would have to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to get a rookie, you want to get a superstar rookie, right? But then you're like, I mean, you need to operate this offense now. I mean, if you want to like go deep into the playoffs and get a chemistry with Derek Carr, at the end of the day, you need to figure out what a structure gonna have to do to be able to do that. And so, I really like the Devontae Adams idea. At first, I was like, it's impossible, right? I mean, reality check's not gonna happen. But then, obviously, assuming that everything works out, he doesn't get franchise tagged. I think it is somewhat possible if you think about when you think about allocating funds. You know, if you allocate money to Devontae Adams, let's say, and not spend it on some other contracts that aren't really worth it, this can actually help you in the long run. So let's say we have a salary cap of what, around 40, 60? I'm not sure. But I mean, it seems like people are like set on either Devontae Adams or other players. And then I started thinking, why would you want to get other players that aren't guaranteed and kind of waste that same money you would have used on Devontae Adams on other players? And you're going to have players like Nick Witkowski, Littleton, and players like that, and then you get into contract troubles over the years. And so that's why I think if Devontae Adams is possible a free agent, it wouldn't be just a flashy move. It would be a smart move, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I was looking at some of the Twitter responses and reactions about Derek Carr. He said, "Excited, we have a veteran lead on our football team that knows how to play the position and won a lot of games. Excited to see what we can do together." And basically, he says, just basically, generally says he has Bill Belichick put all that stuff. I think, again, well, I'm not going to repeat what I said before. I'm going to take something entirely new. I want to see where the team is after the draft, going into training camp. I want to see how this new environment and this new team shapes out, because the one thing that is true is all this is new. McDaniels is new. Coaching staff is new. Think about it. Mark Bedane isn't there anymore. He's not the president of the Raiders. A significant portion of the Raiders person is gone. There's a lot of change in the building. So this is year one of a whole new regime, both on the business side and on the football side. And I'm interested to see how that mix comes along, because it's new. I don't know how these folks work together. I don't know. And so I think someone's talking about that robotic sound in the background. That robotic sound represents the system that Josh McDaniels is trying to build, that machine of winning. That's the one thing that's clear to me, that he wants a machine of winning, right? That engineers wins. And I expect him to really do well. I would be, again, I said it before, and I'll say it again, and I want to take some predictions to close out. So close out the meeting. We should do this again. But I think the Raiders are going to – I'm not prepared to say they'll win the division, but I am prepared to say that they'll go to the playoffs. And the reason why I'm saying I'm not prepared to say they're winning the division is because of this. The Kansas City Chiefs, as far as I'm concerned, is the gold standard for coaching staffs and approaches. And it's no surprise that Andy Reid, who learned football under Bill Walsh, well, actually Mike Holmgren, but still is a student of the Bill Walsh way of developing an organization, is at the top of the rung of NFL coaches, or near it, right now. So until the Raiders can go through, and let's say we get to the point where we're 8 wins, we are 8-2, then I'm sold. Because I think that with McDaniels and his approach, if the Raiders are 8-2, they're not going to crash. They're going to stay there. And they're going to build on that. And you're going to get a playoff contender that can march the team into the Super Bowl if they get to 8-2. If they don't get to 8-2, my prediction is the reason they didn't get to 8-2 had something to do with how the players, how they communicated or not well with the players, and what they got out of them in the Las Vegas environment. I really believe that's going to be the case. And we'll see just how mature Coach McDaniels really is when he starts getting that bumpy road, and maybe has that player that isn't happy or has a mental issue or whatever. He'd better have a playbook to deal with that, because he's got a playbook to deal with getting a player, playbook for designing players and all that. But when it comes to the Vegas thing, I'm still not convinced. So let's close this out. Alvaro, your closing thoughts about this?
I get your uh, your concern with Las Vegas. I mean, we already had a couple accidents, and it's pretty. The correlation is there, so I mean, who wouldn't be concerned? Um, I would just say, looking at the logistics of it, I mean, as an organization, maybe it's harder said than done. It's easier said than done, but I mean, they can employ strategies or stuff like strike rules, something. But I mean, with a problem like that, it seems like an intentional problem. So I mean, I can't really put my finger on it. You can't really just say this is how you're gonna do it because it's just more complicated. But other than Las Vegas, other than that lingering problem, assuming everything is right, I would say what you said, a record? You want a prediction or what? Yeah. So I expect if Josh McDaniels does everything right, I would not be surprised we're Super Bowl contenders. Because I want to say, we were a play away from going into overtime with Super Bowl contenders. So, and I've been looking at the playoffs, and all the playoff games were super close games. It makes you ask yourself, what teams are actually warranted to go to the Super Bowl? Just a field goal away from going to the Super Bowl. I mean, so at the end of the day, if little stuff was misplaced here and there, we could have been in the Super Bowl this year. So besides that, I mean, if we have, Derek Carr threw that interception and stuff like that, if those mistakes can be minimized throughout the year, yeah, I don't see why not we should not be in the Super Bowl. That's my take.
Okay, what do you think?
Well, for me, I don't know if I can make a solid prediction of what the season may look like. I think for me at least, I have to take into consideration that we still have the draft, we still have the OEs, and then we also have the significant date of June. Because in that theory, we have a lot of players that we can release some money, and not get banked by getting a hard hit, releasing them before June 1st. And once I see what's happening between now and June 1st, you have a better idea of what's going to happen moving forward. Now, to top on the topics, what Zenny said about with regards to what he will be like dealing with adversity in the team, that would be interesting to me as well. We like that his experiences in Denver has really put him in a place where there was a maturation that happened with him that led him to be a better offensive coordinator. And I think about what happened this past year with New England. They weren't the old New England team that we've all known in the past with Tom Brady. So there was some adversity there, but if you think about it, I think they really pulled it towards the end of the season. So I like to think that even that experience last year with Mac Jones and some of the ups and downs they went through gave some practice that could occur as a head coach moving forward, especially like I said throughout his experience Denver. He went back and really, I think, matured at pointing into it as a coach. So for me, to be honest, I think let me wait until after the OTAs and after June 1st, and I could give you a really good prediction. So I'll leave it at that.
Eric, what say you? Close this up.
All right, you know me, Zenny. Every year, I always say Raiders make the playoffs. Now, 11-6, 10-6, but every year I say Raiders get in. I don't care how they get in, wild card, division. But you're right about Kansas City. They're the team to beat still, and I'm optimistic that Josh will. He's still got a long road ahead, but I'm more optimistic that we will have a winning season. So to me, anything short of a playoffs, I believe we're going to make the playoffs. Depending what the NFL is going to do with, the games this year again, if they're going to have like it was last year. And here's a date to look after for Devontae Adams. So March 8th, the Packers could either franchise tag Devontae or not. So when March 8th rolls around, if the Packers don't franchise Devontae Adams, the Raiders have a shot at getting him. So March 8th is the date to look at for the Packers to see what they're going to do with Devontae. And of course, Aaron Rodgers still hasn't made his decision yet, which I think is I'm getting tired of talking about Aaron right now. And and Brady's coming back and all this stuff. But I say Raiders make the playoffs. I say Raiders make the playoffs. And as a second seed, I would say second seed because I don't know what Denver's going to be. Maybe the Chargers still going to be good as well. But I think we match up pretty well with the Chargers, though. So Kansas City to me is going to, always be the team to beat, obviously. But I think it's going to come down to Raiders, Chiefs, and Chargers again in our division. And I say the Raiders make the playoffs. I really do. We play the Niners this year, by the way, too. So,
All right, folks. Hey, thanks a lot. Stick around in the background, everybody. It's 2:39. I'll be back later tonight. We'll live stream more general and combine reviews at about 10 o'clock Eastern, which is 7 o'clock on the West Coast. All right. Live long and prosper. Thank you, everybody. Welcome, Alvaro. Great job.
thank you, guys.
Thank
You
you.
got it. Got it.
Having me.
Okay. Yeah. Subscribe to Zenny62.
Nice meeting you, Alvaro. Nice meeting you.
Subscribe to Zenny62. Mark Oakland News.
See you later,
Now.
Joseph. Hey, I liked your other video, Joseph,
And,
about Batman.
Yes.